All right, well, we've got Scott Braddock on line one. We're going to go right to the phones. Scott, and we always seem to run out of time, so I'm going to get over here quickly. The big news in Texas is unemployment. So how is Texas dealing with the crazy unemployment claims coming in?
Well, we have millions of people who are newly unemployed in Texas, and as we pointed out previously on the show, when we see these giant numbers, just remember those are just the people who were able to get through on the phone and say that they were unemployed and make that claim. There are lots more people who are, in the queue trying to do that, and we've seen some desperate times now, some desperate measures. The Texas Senate and the Texas House both now volunteering their staffers to go over and train to be able to take, unemployment claims at TWC, which is unprecedented. I've never seen that before. I think there's a little bit of frustration over the fact that, and I'm going to be reporting more out on this at quorumreport.com, Matt, there is just a huge backlog. People who have made these unemployment claims and can't get their claims processed. I'm told that when they're training new people, and I think they have something like 1,000 people who have said they were willing to be trained to take these calls from people and help process claims. But apparently the Workforce Commission so behind the eight ball on this, they can only train about 30 people at a time, 30 people at a time, and that takes a few days. So that would take quite a long time to get 1,000 people trained up to do this. So they do need more resources over there, and I would guess that if you look back over the last couple legislative sessions, when this state agency, just like others, has asked for more money, they do not generally get it.
Yeah, and another thing is, as far as that's concerned, I know that a lot of people are not hiring. Are they actually hiring people to come in, or are they just bringing them from other places?
At this point, it looks like a lot of volunteering of certain staff going on.
Because they don't really have the budget, right?
They do want to hire more people, and Governor Abbott has talked about trying to get more people on board there and put more resources in, although we don't have a lot of detail about that just yet. And as I said, what they really need right now is more resources as far as being able to train people. So if they were able to hire them, at this point, they don't have the training capacity to get people going over there. So it's sort of a mess all the way around. Hey, Dave.
Listen, it seems to me like that the big news that is facing Texas, of course, is this oil situation, which the price of oil has basically gone to nothing.
Yep.
And so much of our state budget is derived from oil taxes. Is there any talk? I mean, is there anyone that's looking at any projections right now of how bad or how much this is affecting future budgets?
Yeah, absolutely. We had reported first at QuorumReport.com that the comptroller, Glenn Hager, has been discussing this first privately with Texas House members a couple of weeks ago, and then he made some on-the-record comments basically saying the same thing this week, that when he does another revenue estimate for the state of Texas, he would expect to revise the numbers downward to the tune of billions of dollars. He hasn't said exactly what those numbers are going to be, but he is using the term recession, and he's not talking about a future recession, Dave. He's saying that we're in a recession right now. And as the two of you know, all very well, the first quarter was already starting to see contraction in the economy before we saw this oil price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia. By the way, that OPEC meeting yesterday, bottom line is, without going into all the detail, it sort of disappointed everybody. They didn't really come up with anything that is going to mean something substantial for production. So you did have oil prices tumbling again yesterday, down around $22 a barrel this morning. And so, this is going to have a huge impact on what happens with the Texas budget. And I was doing the numbers, Dave. There are probably more than 100 currently serving Texas House members who have never had to serve during a budget-cutting session. The last big one would have been in 2011 when they cut $5 billion from public education. We had a spending session last time in 2019 when they came in with a surplus for how much money there was in the bank for the state of Texas. But when they try to write a $250 billion budget over a 24-month horizon with maybe a deficit of $10 billion or more going into the legislative session in January, I would say that would not be unrealistic.
Wow.
It's going to get ugly.
Geez, that's going to have a big impact. How much is in our rainy day fund?
Right now, there's about $9 billion in there, so that wouldn't make up the entire difference. And the rainy day fund, of course, as your listeners know, is replenished by oil and gas severance taxes, which have slowed down to a drip, if that, because of the price of oil that we were just talking about. And keep in mind, in the 2019 legislative session, lawmakers did authorize spending from the rainy day fund, so money's coming out of it right now as you and I are talking for the things that they designated it for. So I wouldn't be surprised, and the comptroller said something like this as well this week, I wouldn't be shocked if when they come back in January that the end balance for the rainy day fund, the economic stabilization fund, I wouldn't be surprised if it was around $8 billion, or maybe even less than that. $7.5 billion would be realistic.
So, Scott, the price of oil, now, I know that Saudi Arabia and Russia are both hurting because of the price of oil, but OPEC did not cut anywhere near what Donald Trump had expected, it seems.
Right.
I think Donald Trump originally said he thought it was going to be between 15 million barrels or more a day, and it ended up being 10,
Right.
with them saying that it's going to start sliding back to 8 within less than a year. I mean, is this too little, too late? And then on top of that, is this even really going to help at all?
I can't see where it helps much right now. Too little, too late. I'm not sure. I mean, the oil business has always been a boom and bust business. And I remember when we were in the midst of the big fracking boom going back to 2011 or so, and we already had some of it going on before that. But in the big boom, I remember talking to state lawmakers about whether or not we could always count on oil, around $100 a barrel, the way it was in 2013, for example. And at the time, those who have watched this for a long time said you can't count on that. To be at $100 or to be at $20, it's just a whole new world and has completely different meanings for what our state budget's going to look like and for what the oil industry itself looks like. I mean, aside from the state budget, how many jobs are being lost all across Texas because of oil being at about $20 a barrel? And then that, of course, has ripple effects throughout the economy. How many businesses benefit from the fact that there are well-paid oil and gas workers in this state who can then turn around and spend that money at other places?
Yeah. So we are talking to Scott Braddock, editor of the Quorum Report. Now, you had sent me something. There's a lawsuit over whether people can attend church services during the pandemic. How is that going, and what is that exactly looking like?
Well, in Harris County, where Houston is, the county judge had said that her order included people not being able to go to church services, and this is a big question heading into Easter weekend here on Good Friday. You have a lot of folks who would like to go to church on Sunday. Now, a lot of pastors, of course, have said, and I don't know what they're all saying in Lubbock. You would know better than I do, but
all of them I know of are doing online services.
Right, and that's happening all across the state. The governor's order it actually conflicts with what the judge in Harris County had said. The governor's order says that people can go to church services if they can't be done online, although, as you said, a lot of pastors have said that they are able to do the services virtually, so I think it's not an issue for a lot of folks. But there are some Christian activists in Houston who are suing in state district court. At first, they had gone to the Texas Supreme Court and asked that the county judge in Harris County's order be set aside so that people couldn't be told that they can't go to church. But look, this is something that I think is a big point of confusion for some folks, because there are going to be those who still want to have their church services on Sunday, especially on Easter, and some of them are going to go. And then you have, the public health consequence of gathering a lot of folks and a lot of people who, as you and I have talked about, Matt, a lot of the folks who kind of desperately want to go to church and faith, and I can't blame them for that, but they do want to be able to do it. But there is an issue with their health, and you're talking about a lot of the very at-risk folks when it's a lot of elderly people who want to go to church.
Yeah, and I do have a little bit of wonder. I don't think the governor, to be honest, there's a few things that I don't think he was clear on with his order, but I don't think he was very clear, because it was kind of no, you can't go to church. Yes, you can go to church. You got to stay 10 foot or 6 foot apart. I don't think it was very clear on from him.
Not clear at all, and it's confusing to people, absolutely. And in fact, his entire order was made very unclear to people when, as we talked about last week, when he first unveiled it, he said this is not a stay-at-home strategy. And then the very next day, he released a video that said, you're required to stay at home. So people were asking, what's the real truth here? And it hasn't been made any more clear in the meantime.
Right. Now, the other thing that I wanted to ask you about, now I know that the lieutenant governor had come out and said that he thinks it's time for us to be looking at a way to get the jobs back open, get the state back open and moving. And then the governor came out and kind of, I guess, stood behind him on that. Is there any details at all about what they're planning on doing once this is lifted, or any details on when this might be happening?
There's really not. The lieutenant governor this week did come out and say that he was creating a task force to try to come up with strategies for restarting the Texas economy, and he tried to be respectful and say, look, this is only for after President Trump and Governor Abbott give us sort of a green light here to start phasing back people to work, and get the economy going. The administration, the Trump administration, has said that it'll have to be phased in. The economy will have to restart on a rolling basis. But right now they just want to come up with some strategies. They've got business folks who are involved in that, and some of the best minds in Texas will be working on it. But in the meantime, it's sort of a waiting game because, as Dr. Fauci, the main expert for the administration, has said, the virus sets the timeline. The folks who want to get the economy going again don't get to do that.
So one of the things that I find interesting, and this has a lot to do with Texas, but you may or may not know much about this, but we talked to Dr. Skuvenek, the president of Texas Tech University, and he said that the universities in the Big 12 have gotten together, the heads of the Big 12, and said, look, we cannot survive without football. We have to find a way to have football, even if we have to start it in basketball season or something. It has to happen. That's where our money comes from. Have you heard anything about what some of the plans are, maybe that they've come up with to make sure that there's football?
Well, I'm not sure, but they're going to have to come up with some interesting strategies if you're going to do it. When you still have a reality of social distancing going on, which I think that you probably still would. And some of the different sports, franchises and some of the different sports leagues have talked about, having the games be almost like exhibition games, but they happen in empty stadiums, right? So, so there is that out there as a possibility. Of course,
and TV's where the
television. Yeah, right.
TV's where the money comes from.
Exactly. So people can still watch it on TV, and they could hold it in smaller arenas for sure. But I don't think they've settled on anything.
Yeah. All right. Well, Scott, we've run out of time, but thanks for coming on. Want to remind everyone that QuorumReport.com is where you can get a lot of this news. Is there anything specific you want to advertise from QuorumReport.com?
We'll be tracking what Governor Abbott has to say in his update this afternoon and continue to let you know what's happening with your state government. Answer some more of these questions about the Workforce Commission as well at QuorumReport.com. Thanks, Matt.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Scott Braddock, editor of the Quorum Report. Thank you for coming on, and we'll be right back after these messages.